Hey guys, welcome back. This is Eric the Nerd Guy, YouTube channel focusing exclusively on pimped out commander decks. And sorry I haven't made a video in a long time, but just to give you a little channel update here, I'm going to start trying to make more regular videos so that you guys can see the process I use to maintain and update my commander decks. Some of you may know, based on the videos in my channel, I have about a dozen decks that are all pimped out to the most extreme degree in general, and also been maintaining these decks in some cases for about 10 years. So started playing around the time the first commander decks came out in 2011. So started playing back when there was only one type of booster pack. You see here the new Bloomburrow. And why you see that is today's video is actually just going to be a quick update video on what cards I updated into my decks from Bloomburrow. And there are actually quite a few. So let's just dive in and get right to that. So I have two stacks here. Basically how I have them organized is one stack is actual new cards from the base set, and then the other set is like reprints of pimped out versions. So we'll look at each card, talk about what deck it goes in, why, and so forth, but just kind of try to show you guys what I do when a new set comes out and evaluating cards and so forth. So the first card I've got here is the 3 Tree City. This is obviously a very tribal focused card. And the only deck I really have that will take advantage of this is my Scarab God deck, which is zombie tribal. And so I believe almost every creature, if not every creature in that deck, is a zombie other than the Scarab God. So we'll be adding the 3 Tree City into that deck, just replacing like a swamp or something. And basically, I usually like to use the most pimped out version of a card. This is the only one I felt like had a little bit of a darker feel to it, again, because it's going in a zombie deck. Most of them were like way too bright and colorful, so I just went with the base set version for that. Then the next one we have is the Inkeeper's Talent. Basically, this comes down cheaper and it can upgrade into ultimately what is comparable in some ways to a doubling season. If one or more counters would be put on a permanent or player, put twice that many of each of those kind of counters on that permanent or player instead. Why this is huge as opposed to compared to doubling season. Doubling season talks about if an effect would put one or more counters. This just says if you would put one or more counters. So what that means is it can be from a cost or an effect. Most importantly, when you +2 or +1 a planeswalker, that is a cost, but you would still be putting counters on that permanent. So you do still get to double the cost of that, as opposed to doubling season only works for an effect. So it works on the ETB, but not on the +1s. So this is, I'm going to actually add it in addition to doubling season, so it's not going to be a swap out, but I'm going to be adding that to my Atraxa, the Praetor's Voice commander deck, which you'll actually hear me talk about later on because it has quite a number of additions in the second segment here. So Atraxa, Praetor's Voice I have is a 4-color planeswalker focused deck, so I don't focus too much on the proliferate or poison mechanic, but I do focus on planeswalkers, and I do try to play the weirdest versions of cards in this deck. So this is where all my secret lair type cards go into, because it's 4 colors. I can get pretty much all those in this deck. So that's Inkeeper's Talent. Moving on then to the Iridescent Vine Lasher. So this has Offspring 2, and whenever a land enters, deal 1 damage to an opponent. So what deck this is going into actually is going to be my Yarok the Desecrated deck. So Yarok the Desecrated is all about enter the battlefield triggers. This is such a fun deck to play because if a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So any permanent ETBs, you get extra triggers. So how this works then is when I play the Iridescent Vine Lasher, I have the option to pay Offspring 2. So you typically do want to do that. So you're going to play this for 3 mana. And when you play it for 3 mana, he will enter the battlefield. Then his Offspring will enter the battlefield. And his Offspring ability will actually trigger twice because of Yarok. So you'll actually get 2 Offspring just for paying for that once. So basically we will do that. And then how else it interacts with Yarok, of course, is because this is also an ability that triggers when a permanent enters the battlefield. Landfall is, of course, there's a lot of landfall in my Yarok deck. So let's just say I play a land. And let's call this a fetch land for this example. So I play a land. When that enters, I've got 3 triggers, 1, 2, 3, 1 off of each of my Iridescent Vine Lashers. And then also, of course, when this enters, I get double triggers. So I then have 6 triggers in all. So when this land enters, I get 6 Iridescent Vine Lasher triggers. And then let's say I crack it and enter again, then I get 6 more triggers. So basically, we're having a fetch land cause 12 damage, and this is to a target opponent. It'd be nicer if it was each opponent, but still super fun card, and I would say paint a target on this, but it's 3 different things, so it'd be very hard to target, very annoying for your opponent. So that is the Iridescent Vine Lasher. I think my math on that is right, guys, but correct me if I'm wrong. So then next we have a card that's going to be featured in our Omnath deck. So our Omnath deck is all about landfall and lands. And so this is a sweet card from the new set. Love this art with the little bunnies running away. Lum Bellow of the Woods. So this guy is all about getting huge for the number of lands, which works well. But really, when he enters, you mill 4 and return all lands from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So that's going to just be a massive landfall of any of your fetches, as well as anything that got put in the graveyard. So we do play that in our Omnath deck. And then also a lot of times I play a second copy in another deck. I do also have a mono green Azusa Lost But Seeking deck, which is also very land focused. So we're going to put the regular version of that also in our Azusa deck. Then rounding out the last couple here of cards that are new is Agost Instigator. So this guy basically is for our Purphoros God of the Forge deck. And again, very similar to Purphoros ability, where we have creatures entering and you do direct damage. So this guy was basically made for Purphoros. And again, if you offspring him, you basically get to create a second one, and then more or less that is going to be basically a replacement Purphoros or an additional Purphoros, however you want to consider it, but just more damage, more of exactly what your deck wants to be doing. So that's the Agost Instigator. Then the very last one I have here is the Fecund Greenshell. I was a little disappointed this guy doesn't have Defender, but his ability is just so good. The last ability that says, when a creature you enter control with toughness greater than its power enters, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land, put it on the battlefield tapped. Otherwise, put it into your hand. So it's card draw / ramp, even a little better than, I didn't actually say what this is for. This is for my Arcades the Strategist deck. And so basically this is a Defender's deck, and every creature in the deck, maybe barring 1 or 2, has toughness greater than his power. So it's basically going to say whenever you enter a creature, you get to do that ability. So I thought that was worth it to try out. Getting ramp is really good because just getting the lands out of your library so you can cycle through and just play a defender, draw a card, play a defender, draw a card. You know, that's what Arcades wants to be doing to begin with. So I'm going to give this guy a try, even though he himself is not a defender creature. And he does trigger off himself too, so that's nice to know as well, because it does say when Fecund Greenshell or another creature enters. So that is all the new cards. Now we're just going to look at cosmetic upgrades. So the first one we have there is actually the only reprint from the deck, and that is the Fabled Passage. Again, this is just going in my Omnath deck because I'm so crazy about landfall, and it's really easy for us to get up to 4 lands. So we do play that in our deck, and I'm just going to be replacing it with this beautiful new strawberry version. So very fun in our multicolor landfall deck. Then the next thing we've got is the Swords to Plowshares. Really cool full art here, or I should say borderless art. And I think this is going to go, I don't know exactly, probably in mono white, just because it kind of has that playful mousy feel to it, and I like it for that. So definitely be adding this Sword to Plowshares to upgrade one of our swords in one of our decks. Same thing here with mono green, really cool. This is actually the art from the collector booster box, like on the box art. And it's the Sylvan Tutor. Again, not as good because it's sorcery speed, but there's still a number of decks that are very creature based. We have an Animar deck, and then also it's going to be good in mono green. So again, it's just going to replace one of the Sylvan Tutors in one of those decks. Then we have the Sword of Fire and Ice. I think this is a really cool art, you know, with the guy with the little orbs there and then his sword. So Sword of Fire and Ice, I have a mono white deck and has a very small equipment sub theme, so it does play the Sword of Fire and Ice. So we're going to be replacing that in there. Birds of Paradise, love this art with the full art. I think it's really cool. And so Birds of Paradise is one of my perennial cards. I do like to play my decks a little low to the ground and ramp out quickly. So Birds of Paradise is in essentially any deck that plays green. Other than, I guess, my wall deck, he's not in there, but almost every green deck is going to be playing the birds. So definitely going to be upgrading that in one of our decks. The Baleful Strix, you've already seen our Yarok earlier. He's a Yarok staple, just because you get the 2-card draw, and then Flying Death Touch is also just a really good combo. So when you can play this and draw 2 cards, definitely something we want to be doing. And this is the first time we've seen it with a borderless art, so that's going to be subbing out my Baleful Strix and Yarok. Then all of these next cards are all about planeswalkers. Like I said, I have my Atraxa deck, and the theme of the deck in particular too is that I mentioned I play kind of the weird secret lair type cards in there. So I thought these animal versions of the planeswalkers would actually fit well with that theme of, you know, playing the weird cards. So obviously if you want to do a classier version, certainly can play the main actual people cards, but I thought these would be fun to run. So we've got Elspeth, Sun's Champion for that. We've got Jace the Mind Sculptor in fox form. We've got Narset, Parter of Veils in bird form. So these are some of our most staple walkers. I actually thought they picked some really good ones to do. And then Teferi the Time Raveler, this one I really like, has good Teferi vibes to it. And lastly, Tamiyo the Field Researcher. Tamiyo is not, this one is sometimes overlooked as not a great card, but when you have a doubling season down and it enters with 8 counters, this ultimate is just absurd. And you can immediately do it and keep her alive and get this emblem. Draw 3 cards, and you get an emblem with, you may cast spells from your hand without paying their mana costs. So that's just so good, too good to pass up. And the rest of the card is serviceable. So that's Tamiyo, Field Researcher. So there's kind of our upgraded animal planeswalkers that we'll be putting into that deck. So guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. I'm going to try to get full updates of my commander decks out soon. And as I put them out too, I know a lot of people have asked for deck lists. I'll give you the link to my Mox Field so that you can see all the decks. And I've tried to maintain and keep the exact version of the cards I use in those decks too, so you can literally see the exact decks and versions that I play. So thanks for watching. Appreciate you listening to all my updates, and look forward for more videos. Thanks, guys.